Attention Guilford County, are you ready for positive change in our schools? Introducing Bill Goebel, a true champion for our students, parents, and teachers. With years of experience and unwavering dedication, Bill Goebel is the leader we need on the school board. As a current member representing District 3, Bill is already making a difference, shaping policies that benefit our community. Vote for Bill Goebel for school board, and let's build a brighter future for Guilford County together. Paid for by the committee to elect Bill Goebel for school board.
Coming up in this episode of Finding Common Ground.
Oh man, that's a story. I tell you what.
Abuse and neglect. The root cause is not bad parenting. The root is the overload of stress.
Taking a child away from their parents. That's a lot of power for anyone to have, but at the same time, not doing it, then one neglects.
There are two sides to every coin.
How do we deal with racial issues when they affect relationships?
Finding common ground on all those issues that we come against.
There's black and there's white.
And I think as Christians, we have to learn how to get together because we're not in heaven.
I've met more interesting people just by God just bringing them in.
Republicans and Democrats.
But a lot of times, when it comes to race and it comes to culture and it comes to perception, even as Christians, we don't always understand. We look at it through our lenses.
There's Bill.
I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland called Parma.
Any black people in Parma?
There was not one.
Not one black person,
Not
Bill?
one.
Come
Not
on, Bill.
one.
You got to have one. Token black person? A token?
And there's Odell.
I grew up in Charleston, South Carolina, public housing, single mom, divorced single mom of 4 kids. And I came up through segregation and all that kind of stuff.
If a black person drove through the town, the police would stop and escort them out.
Bill and Odell are finding common ground.
A part of what we have to do is listen to each other, find the common ground, and question, not questioning you like you're on a witness stand, but questioning you for better understanding.
Father God, we just say thank you for your grace and mercy, and just thank you for those who look after the children, God. Those who look after your children who can't look after themselves. So we continue to pray a special blessing on them and their organization. Amen.
Amen. Dear Heavenly Father, we just lift up the individuals that dedicate their life to protecting our youth, protecting children, and give them the stamina to keep going during times that are sometimes encouraging and sometimes discouraging. Lord, we lift up Kristen and Sharon as they go about their duties of protecting youth and giving them protective factors and resilience as they go through trauma. Amen.
Amen. So, Bill, I hear we have a drum roll. A drum roll, please. We have some exciting news. So I'm going to ask you, beg you to let the audience know what this exciting news is and why it's so important for so many people now and the generations to come, sir.
Well, these are two of my favorite people besides you.
Wait a minute. I thought I was your favorite person. I got kicked out already.
Well, you're my favorite good-looking black person.
Okay, thank you for the qualifications, sir, because just so you know, Bill, black is back now. Black is back. Understand that. Black is back.
Oh, here we go again. Another lawsuit. I can see it coming. Well, let me introduce Sharon and Kristen. They work for an organization called Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina, and I have the privilege of serving with them as a board member, and Sharon's the executive director, and Kristen's the head of marketing, and probably about 5 other things that I don't know about that she does. So let me go ahead and let you folks introduce yourself. Why don't we start with Sharon first?
Well, thank you both for having us back. I'm Sharon Hirsch. I serve as president and CEO, and we have been Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina for 45 years, and we have just announced a rebrand and a reframing of our organization. We're continuing to be PCANC, but we are now calling ourselves Positive Childhood Alliance North Carolina, because that's the outcome we want for kids. We want all children to experience positive childhoods, especially those left behind. And we want to build a system of supports that assures that all children in our state have every opportunity to reach their full potential.
Wow, that's a great name change. You know, positive childhood experiences. Can you dig into that a little bit more?
I can, but let's introduce Kris first.
Yes.
If that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me. You might want to hey, Odell, this is our next host. When I can no longer do it, I think you need to bring Sharon in.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for having me on today. My name is Kris Demers O'Brien, and I am the Director of Communications and Marketing at the newly rebranded Positive Childhood Alliance, North Carolina. I've been with the organization over 10 years. I lose track after that.
Oh, wow.
And so I've seen the shift, the change in the narrative at the local level, the state level, and the national level. And I feel like we finally got over that tipping point. We're there with some exciting things coming from national leadership, and just building those partnerships at the statewide level is really going to help get us to where we're going. So thanks for having us on today, Bill and Odell.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's our privilege. You've been on before, and I think Sharon's been on twice before. So we're going to have to start giving out merit badges for people that are on more than once.
We greatly appreciate the opportunity to share our message with your audience.
Thank you. Well, we're happy to do it. So go ahead, and the question is, and either one of you can answer, you both can, positive childhood experience versus Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina. The difference is huge.
Yeah, it's obviously a more positive frame. Leading with that word is really important. And the work that we've been doing for a very long time has been focused on preventing adverse childhood experiences. And I know we've both been on your show before talking about ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. There's a huge body of research that tells us that what happens to us in childhood, whether negative or positive, has an impact on our long-term health and well-being. It impacts our future prosperity. It impacts the way babies' brains develop. It impacts school performance. And then, of course, our health over the lifespan. But there's also a growing body of evidence that says that positive childhood experiences actually foster the development of children's brains and can buffer the impact of those adverse experiences. And those positive experiences don't have as strict a definition as the original ACEs study did, but it's things that you would think of, that you would want for your kids. It's having one supportive relationship in your life. It's having one good friend. It's having positive experiences in your community. It's being connected to a faith community or another community that gives you meaning. These are all examples of positive childhood experiences that we want to grow and enable. And as we talk to our friends that have developed the science of the positive, we know that the positive and negative always exist in the world. But in our society, the negative is a whole lot louder than the positive. We want to increase the volume on the positive because we know that'll give our kids better opportunity to thrive. Would you add anything to that, Kris?
You did so well articulating that, Sharon. I think, I just want to talk about, too, the fact that there's confusion about our previous name, Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina, because when you go up to someone and you say, we're Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina, they don't see themselves in that work, or they might not want to align with that work. They say, that's not me, that's them over there. And so we wanted to move toward what we hope to see rather than what we want to prevent from happening. That's an abstract idea that's really hard to understand. So by just shifting the focus on what we're aiming towards, people can really grasp that and get behind that. And I also wanted to share that we're celebrating 45 years this year as the state chapter of Prevent Child Abuse America. And we are still the state chapter for North Carolina for Prevent Child Abuse America as we head into Positive Childhood Alliance North Carolina. So we are just evolving our approach and just following the research where we want to go. And we're doing it boldly. And I'm very proud of the team for moving in this direction. And we've heard great positive feedback from our partners and supporters and funders. So I just wanted to give that kind of background information too.
Yeah, and I would just add to that too, that our sister chapters have given us really positive feedback. A lot of other chapters don't call themselves Prevent Child Abuse for the same reasons. We want to be inviting people into the work. We want to bring more allies into our space. And we think this name helps us with that. And that PCA America has been very supportive of us in this shift as well. They've created a new framework or theory of change for creating a primary prevention ecosystem in our country. And a lot of what you see in the images on the screen for those folks that see this version of our conversation reflects that ecosystem. It's about, our children having really positive experiences. And the North Star for that is about all children and families growing up with purposeful lives with hope for the future. And we're talking about using language that is meaningful to families and maybe a little bit less jargony than the way that we've talked about it in the industry.
Very good.
But it's really the direction our entire field is moving in, focusing on what we want to see and building supported and supportive communities for families. Really focusing on community is the key to making that happen.
Yes. Can you give us an analogy of something that maybe sports related or some other relationship on how you look for a positive experience versus an abusive experience? If not, I got one.
Well, I think that there are tons of them. You can watch them now during the March Madness, right?
Yes.
And I think you particularly see it maybe more on the women's side than the men's, but, encouragement, letting folks know when they're doing something well, wanting to repeat the things that are working from coaches is a great example of reinforcing the positive versus shaming, blaming, or, really focusing on the things that someone's doing wrong. It's really hard to get motivated if you're feeling beaten down and criticized a lot. We really believe in uplifting people.
Yeah, and go to the March Madness you're talking about. And Odell played in a national championship in basketball. And
wow.
I see coaches, the guy misses a shot or lady misses a shot or a free throw. They don't come at him and start screaming at him. They're clapping their hands. Okay, come on. We can get the next one.
Yeah, you got this.
Yeah, you got this. Yeah. Odell?
Well, it's interesting. First, I want to congratulate you all again on the name change, especially with a 45-year history and culture. I do a lot of consulting work with companies, and sometimes we do it this way because we've always done it that way. And even with churches, the pastor is 99 years old, falling asleep in the pulpit, but we can't do a succession plan yet because we have to look after Rev. So my question is to you, Kris. Kris, how hard was it? I know you have a great leader in Sharon, but how hard was it to get everyone on board with the culture shift? Now, you've been there 10 years, but culture eats strategy for lunch all the time. So what was your strategy to deal with the culture? And on top of that, you had a national organization, too, that you had to deal with.
Well, luckily, with that national organization, we look to them for their leadership and support. And I'm so glad that we're part of that national network, because we really do, look to them as a leader in the prevention field. But really, our strategy was rinse and repeat and follow the data. We're a data-driven organization. So when new research came out from the Frameworks Institute on how to talk about childhood adversity and child well-being, it talked about leading with hope. And that was mirrored in the science of the positive. You lead with spirit. You lead with the positive. You lead with the outcome that you want to see, because it can become very doom and gloom. If you're talking about preventing child abuse and neglect, people will throw their hands up in the air and say, it's just not possible. I don't know how we can do it. And they just will take themselves out of the equation rather than finding a way to become a part of the equation and the solution. So it was easy. It just took some time, making sure that our partners had the right messaging and support and the capacity. And we offered that to them through technical assistance and support throughout the years in many different ways. But we couldn't have done it without our partners. We had to create that alignment and consistency across the local level, the state level, and the national level. So it's really been just true partnership getting this, to the next step.
Well, Sharon, Kris talks about partnership and data being data driven. And some of the data says that economic support such as SNAP, child care subsidies, Medicaid, housing subsidies, and tax credits have reduced child maltreatment rates and foster care entries. So the whole thing about CPS reporting is down, reduction, foster care, all that's down. So you all are doing a great job. How does data not drive you, but advise you or point you in the right direction to get these great results?
Well, it's critical. We use the data to pull together policy papers and one-page fact sheets that we use with our partners and our policymakers. We talk about it in our training and technical assistance that we provide to agencies across the state. It really is foundational to everything that we do. And I want to be really clear that I don't think CPS rates and foster care entries are really down that much, if at all, in North Carolina. I would say that we're raising awareness about those economic supports and the impact that they could have, but we haven't made those kinds of investments in North Carolina the way that we could. Other states have started to do that, and they're seeing some pretty amazing results. In North Carolina, we've had a big crisis in our child welfare system. And if you have seen some of the news reports, shamefully and too often, children in foster care are often sleeping in DSS offices because they aren't able to find foster care placements. And our response to that is we've got to invest more upstream in supporting birth families so that families can stay together. One of the things that is often hidden in those conversations about child welfare is that we're very quick and readily available in our policy, are able to give money to foster parents. There's something called the foster parent board rate. And so there's a monthly stipend in effect that goes to foster parents and the amount depends on the age of the child. Well, we don't give those kinds of resources to birth families to help them stay together. And far too many of our child welfare cases, especially in North Carolina, are for neglect. Well, and so that's often conflated with poverty. So using the data to share stories, but also share together with that data stories about what families really are experiencing is really the key to me in changing the narrative and helping our policymakers, our policy influencers, and the general public understand better what families really need for them to thrive so that we have far fewer kids in the child welfare system, because we know there aren't good outcomes when that happens.
Well, Sharon, I agree. And I think one of the things Bill was going to ask is, can you explain to our audience what CPS reporting is and what foster care placements? And Bill, make sure I got it correct.
You got it correct. Yeah. When we use acronyms, if you could just explain them, that would help.
Sure. CPS is Child Protective Services. And so in our state, all adults are mandatory reporters for child abuse and neglect. So if you suspect a child may be at risk of physical, emotional abuse or sexual abuse or neglect, you're required to make a report. Part of what we talk about, and those reports go to the Department of Social Services in the county where that family resides. If the allegation is that a parent or caretaker in the home is the cause of that abuse or neglect, if the allegations or the concerns are about a coach or a pastor or a neighbor, then that goes to law enforcement. And if it's in a child care setting, then you actually make a report to the Division of Child Development and Early Education in Raleigh, which makes it a little bit confusing for folks in our state. And sometimes folks don't even know what county they live in, or so they don't know the county Department of Social Services, which one to call. But we also we've started to also really start educating folks about making sure that we support families before we make that report. There are food banks and clothing closets and diaper banks that we should be referring families to before we call CPS and say that a family is neglecting their children. We want to make sure that families get all the support that they need so that they don't end up in that surveillance system and they don't have to experience the trauma of family separation.
And, and thank you so much, and unless it's the last resort, taking a child away from their parents, that's a lot of power for anyone to have. But at the same time, not doing it, then one neglects. So talk a little bit about that, please. And then I want to talk about your pinwheel planting. That's exciting. Is coming up. And also one of my heroes, Marion Wright Edelman, but that's a whole nother deal.
Sometimes it's a fine line between when you should report and when you shouldn't. And if you're not sure, then please do make a report. But making sure folks have access to resources and supports. We like to talk about the idea of how do we support before making a report?
Wow.
And thinking that through, because there are lots of resources in many communities that can help families and avert that trauma of family separation that we were talking about earlier. Our state and other states across the country have been working towards implementation of a new federal law that is providing more resources and supports for families that are at risk of losing their children to the child welfare system and having their children placed in foster care. So there's a movement towards referring families for home visiting programs that can help them strengthen their parenting practices. There's a substance abuse treatment program that's going to be available to families known to child welfare and other mental health services so that families get the support they need so that their kids can thrive. It's a system that's being built. It doesn't exist currently. And that's the challenge, is to build a system while you're flying it.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying, Bill and Sharon and Odell and Kris, is it a crime to be poor, though? Is it a crime to be poor? I grew up in a poor family. Mother's divorced, all that good stuff, living in public housing. We had a lot of poverty in our household, but we had a lot of love in our household. So if you looked at us, we might have looked like poverty, but it was a lot of love. And sometimes people can't see the love because of Odell wasn't well kept. Odell didn't have the right clothes. Odell didn't always bathe the way he should have. Is poverty a sin?
Of course it's not. But sometimes our systems are looking for the wrong things, or they're looking at families and circumstances through very biased lenses. The system itself, as much as I used to work at DSS, and you know that, Odell. The system is set up to make sure that child safety is prioritized, which on the surface makes a lot of sense. But if we're prioritizing safety and being rather safe than sorry, we're prioritizing removal before support and doing more of the things that families need to get to a place where they can take care of their children on their own. There are too many examples of children who've been removed from parents that love them dearly. They're just overwhelmed with the stressors of poverty. And we talk about that a lot, that when you talk about the root causes of child abuse and neglect, the root cause is not bad parenting. The root is the overload of stress on families, and too often it's correlated to the overload of poverty. When you're trying to put food on the table and you don't have transportation to get to work and you can't afford childcare to even go apply for a job, all of those things start to snowball, and it's really, really overwhelming. And if we could just help families with those basic needs, we can help them get back on their feet and be better off. We actually experienced some of that during the pandemic with Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds for community-based child abuse prevention funds. Our state DSS gave some of those funds to the agencies that we support across the state that are delivering evidence-based parenting programs, and gave them the opportunity to provide some flexible funding to support families. And they were really incredibly successful with that. And the average amount of money that they distributed to a family was only $201.
Wow.
And that wasn't $201 a month. It was a one-time infusion of help. And it helped to pay for things like the first few weeks of childcare as a mom went back to work after giving birth to a child before she got her first paycheck. For one family, this is a story that it actually blew my mind that it happened in 2023. But a family's toilet broke, and they didn't have the resources to get that fixed. So they used this funding to buy a new toilet, get it installed. They bought cleaning supplies and toilet paper for the family, and now their little ones can toilet train at home. Before that, they had a bucket that they were using in their home. I mean, that shouldn't be happening anywhere, and it shouldn't be happening in North Carolina. And sometimes it's the small infusions of cash assistance that can really make a difference for families and help them get back on their feet.
Wow. Bill, please take over before Sharon continue to make me cry.
Oh man, that's a story. I tell you what, this question's for Kris. If our viewers wanted to learn more I know we have a lot of online training that's free. Could you just highlight a couple, because there's too much to say, but a couple of things that you would highlight for our audience?
Absolutely. So on our website, positivechildhoodalliancenc.org, anyone can go and find free online trainings, including what is prevention. And that is a training that's self-guided online. You can take it at any time and pause it, go back to it. It just talks about what primary prevention of child maltreatment is. And that's what we're doing here in our work every day. Primary prevention, which means that child abuse and neglect never occurs because we're building those systems of support around children and families. The other one is recognizing and responding to suspicions of child maltreatment. As Sharon mentioned earlier, in North Carolina, there is a mandatory reporting law for every single adult. So if you're an adult and you suspect that a child is being abused or neglected, you should look out for signs and make a report. And that training just helps you know what the signs are, know what to look for, and tells you how to make a report in those different instances that Sharon mentioned. And I also want to end and lead with that fact that, but it is preventable. And we do want to just make sure that we're connecting families with the resources in their community that they might need, because abuse or neglect might not be happening. They might just be having a rough day, a rough month, a rough year. We've all been there. So we just want to make sure that they're getting connected to access to food, transportation, childcare, diapers when they need them. So you can find more information on our website.
Very good.
And I would add, too, that we offer a number of other trainings that aren't online, but that you can access either by joining our Prevention Action Network or contacting us to talk about bringing these trainings to their agencies or your community. It includes Connections Matter, which is a training that focuses on the importance of relationships in building babies' brains and healing trauma and getting families connected to resources in their communities. We train on the Protective Factors Framework, which is the framework from the Center for the Study of Social Policy that talks about the 5 factors that I think we've talked about on this podcast before, that when they're in place, children are more likely to be safe and thriving in supported families and communities. We provide training in the community resilience model, and also have an ACEs prevention curriculum that we have developed. So our team is available to bring those trainings to other agencies, and sometimes we offer those trainings virtually via Zoom when folks sign up for them ahead of time.
Well, Sharon, I know you've mentioned it before, but can you talk about ACEs again for maybe a first-time listener?
Sure. So adverse childhood experiences were first discovered more than 25 years ago with a study from the CDC and Kaiser Permanente. And they basically looked and asked adults about their experiences in childhood using 10 adverse experiences in the first study. And they were things like physical abuse, emotional abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, the 6 forms of child maltreatment, and some household dysfunction questions. Things like if there was an adult in the home that had a substance abuse issue or had a mental health problem, or if they were separated from their parents during childhood, either because of divorce, death, or incarceration. And what they found was they looked at the answers to those questions about whether or not those experiences had happened and the number of times the number of adverse experiences someone had. And then they looked at their healthcare records, and they found a literal dose-response relationship between the number of adverse experiences and poor health outcomes. And so they found that, first of all, that adverse childhood experiences are really common in our culture. 60% of people have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience, and that the more adverse experiences, the more likely you were to experience those bad outcomes. And subsequent studies have reinforced this. And most recently, the CDC a few years ago found that ACEs were correlated with 5 of the top 10 leading causes of death in the United States. And so we're talking about things like depression and heart disease and lung cancer, things that we talk about a lot in our culture because they are so prevalent. A lot of the things that we see advertisements for on TV for medication are related to the things that happen to us in childhood, obesity. And that latest study also found that if we prevented adverse childhood experiences, we could not only save millions of dollars, we could save millions of lives.
Wow.
I just want to add on the topic of adverse childhood experiences, since we're leaning into the positive, just shed light on positive childhood experiences, which can buffer any adverse childhood experience. So if you have an ACE score of 1 or more, that doesn't mean that you're destined for negative outcomes later in life. You have positive childhood experiences or positive adult experiences, you can grow and foster that positive resiliency for yourself and for your family and for your community. And some of those are the ability to talk with your family about your feelings, the sense that family is supported during difficult times, enjoying participating in community traditions, feeling a sense of belonging during high school, being supported by friends, having at least 2 non-parent or caregiver adults who genuinely care about you, and feeling safe and protected by an adult in your home. So if you have those positive childhood experiences, even if you have an adverse childhood experience, you're on the right track. Your health outcomes are going to be better than they might if you didn't have those in place. So that's just really inspiring and hopeful research that we're excited to learn about and cling on to as we move forward to the positive in this new rebrand.
And I want to reinforce, those things that Kris just mentioned are not hard to make happen. They're not rocket science. They're things that we can definitely make possible for more of our kids. Odell, you lead a congregation that provides positive childhood experiences every week.
But Sharon, I probably have more aces than a watermelon has seeds.
And look at how great and successful you are, because you had those positive experiences that buffered it. You are a walking, talking example of why positive childhood experiences make such a big difference.
Yes.
Amen. Well said. Let's talk about Connection Matters for a minute, because last board retreat, we had a presentation, a very brief one. And I know that the presentations can go from a few hours to a couple days. So why don't we talk about what Connection Matters is, why it's important?
Yeah. So Connections Matter, we brought to North Carolina, Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina did back in the day. In, I think, 2018, time is blurred with COVID, but in the fall of 2018, and it's a community-based initiative that is both a training curriculum and a public awareness campaign. So we had a plan in 2019-20 to really disseminate that public awareness campaign and did that effectively, and also built up some trainers across the state through Connections Matter before the world shut down. And it really talks about the intersecting topics of adverse childhood experiences, brain development, trauma, and resilience. And so it really was our training that we still offer today that's a first step in the door to our world when we talk about prevention and why it's important. And just the fact that connections matter. Caring connections in your life can be life-changing. And therefore, we need to invest in programs and policies that foster opportunities to connect within our own children's lives, within our own families and our communities. So if there's anyone who is interested in learning more about Connections Matter, we have anywhere from a 20 to 30 minute presentation all the way up to a full day presentation. And we are willing to come and train businesses and employers, schools, faith communities, anyone who wants to learn more about the importance of caring connections and how it relates to healthy child development. We'd be happy to come and talk with you.
And it's free.
Yes.
Which is great. So Sharon and Kris, I have a networking group that I meet once a month in Raleigh. And as I was thinking, they've been asking, wait, who can we have come present something? Everybody gets to introduce. So I'm thinking if we could do the 20-minute one for that group, the group is 60 people. We usually get about 20. So offline, I'll get in touch with you see if I can get you on the calendar.
We're there.
Odell?
Yes. So Sharon, Kris, help us understand what's pinwheel planting. I think it's April the 2nd at 11:30 at the North Carolina State Farmers Market in Raleigh. When I think of a pinwheel, it's exciting. You imagine a child running and blowing on it, almost like flying a kite. Oh, speaking of that, you all have a kite and a pinwheel in your new logo. I just noticed that. Okay. Explain what that's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pinwheel has been the national symbol of child maltreatment prevention since 2008. And it was a great public awareness tool for helping us change the conversation and change the narrative towards the bright, happy, carefree childhoods we want for all children. It's the symbol of a happy childhood. When you see kids playing with a pinwheel, it's like all is right in the world. So every April for the past, I can't do math that well, but
join the crowd.
People across the nation have planted pinwheel gardens. Organizations, businesses, faith communities have all come together and planted these pinwheel gardens. So we are coming together with the Department of Health and Human Services on April 2nd, as you mentioned, at 11:30 a.m. We'll be at the NC State Farmers Market. Sharon will be giving remarks along with Lisa Tucker-Colley from the Department of Health and Human Services, Child Welfare and Family Wellbeing Division. So we invite the public, our partners, anyone who sees themselves as a positive childhood ally, and how can you not, to come out and join us for this pinwheel planting in celebration of Child Abuse Prevention Month, which happens throughout the month of April every year. And this year's theme is building a hopeful future together. So we really hope that we get some folks to come out and join us. There will be food, cake, chips, water available on a first come, first served basis. But we are excited to just be out there and just connect, have some face-to-face time. We've been virtual for the past at least 3 child abuse prevention months, and we miss seeing our peeps. So we hope that folks will come out and join us on Tuesday, April 2nd.
Thank you. Well, Sharon, question. You all have the 4-star Charity Navigator Award. So you all are excellent with the funds. If someone wanted to donate to the organization, how would they go about doing that?
They can actually just go to our website at positivechildhoodalliancenc.org and click on the donate button. It's that easy. I also wanted to add about the pinwheels that, we're doing that big pinwheel planting on the 2nd, but organizations all across North Carolina do that in partnership with us. So I hope that folks see them all across the state and really all across the country, because our whole national network participates in this. So you'll see them on the lawns of town halls and in front of police departments. Faith communities do this. Even some of the businesses do across the state. And it's a great opportunity to start that conversation about what do families and kids need so that they can thrive. And we'll even be at the governor's mansion too. And I think they'll be lighting the governor's mansion up blue during the month of April as well.
They will be on Friday, April 5th, which is Wear Blue Day. So wear your blue. I don't care if you're a Duke fan or a UNC fan, wear whatever shade of blue you would like. On Friday, April 5th, and share your photos on social media with hashtag WearBlueDay2024 and hashtag NC, so that we can know that you're from North Carolina. And I just wanted to share too that we just posted a map with all of the locations of events going on across the state that our partners are hosting during April. And that's just like the ones that we know about. We know that there are so many more things happening. So if you're one of our partners listening to this, please reach out to me and my team. We would love to add your event to our map and help you raise awareness and promote it through our networks as well, because we can't do this work without you, and we so appreciate your partnership.
And that's why the word alliance is so critical in our new name. We don't do this work alone. We know prevention happens in partnership, but those allies and agencies and organizations and businesses all across the state are part of making that positive childhood possible for everybody.
So Sharon, help me with this. As we talked a little bit earlier, Marion Wright Adderman, we know of her, the Children Defense Fund. She didn't do it, but she helped lead the effort to the big passage of Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993. What big things out there that you and folks like you around the country are working on? What's that legislation? Because advocacy is one thing, legislation is something totally different.
I would highlight two things. One is paid family and medical leave, to build on Marion Wright Edelman's work. She's a hero. Personally, it was a thrill for me a couple of years ago to get to meet her. She's amazing. But the Family Leave Act that we are currently operating under does not provide paid leave. It just guarantees job protection.
It sounds like something men put together. Something like Bill and Odell went in the room together and put something like that together and came out with that mess. So we apologize, Sharon.
And we know, as we talked earlier, it's that overload of stress, particularly financial stress on families, that is really difficult. And when you're having a new baby, you have a whole bunch of new expenses, right? You're not just paying for diapers, you're paying for formula and baby food and the new nursery and all of the things. And then childcare, and childcare is incredibly expensive. So if you lose your wages during the time that you take time off, that's a terrible thing. And on average in our country, this is still a shocking number to me, but on average in our country, women are going back to work 2 weeks after giving birth.
Wow.
And we know that their bodies have not recovered. Our hormones are not regulated yet. It takes really a full year. And the piece about connections matter in paid family leave is that those early weeks and months of a baby's life are when children develop their sense of nurturing and attachment to their parent. Parent-child attachment is fundamentally the most important piece of early childhood brain development. And if mom's having to go back to work 2 weeks after giving birth, that parent-child's attachment is not going to happen the way that it needs to. So the paid family and medical leave that's been proposed at the congressional level is really important. And I would say that that's important so that there's a level playing field for all employers. There are a lot of employers in North Carolina who have stepped up and are doing the right thing. We're one. We provide paid family leave for our employees when they get ready to have a baby. It's not long enough, really. It's not enough. But for a lot of employers, particularly those that are hiring folks that are making hourly wages, they're not getting the opportunity for paid family leave the way that many white-collar jobs do. The Blue Cross, Blue Shields, the SAS, the big employers are doing a great job with this, but it's those folks that are working in hourly wage jobs that particularly have a hard time getting access to it. This would level the playing field for mom and pop small businesses as well, if there was a level playing field where everyone was required and there was a way to pay for it. So that would be one. The other that I think is incredibly important is the child tax credit. We expanded the child tax credit during the pandemic. We cut child poverty in half.
Wow.
We saw incredible reductions in child maltreatment reports. We think part of that was related to teachers and pediatricians not seeing children as much during the pandemic. But we know a big chunk of that was that families had their basic needs met. They were getting more cash every month to help pay for their basic necessities. And that made a huge difference. And we rolled it all back. We learned these great lessons and we rolled it all back. And so there's a movement now at the federal level to reinstate, at least at a greater level than it is today, that child tax credit, because that's our future workforce. And that's an important way to talk about this work. It's not only, it's the right thing to do, it's going to foster greater positive childhoods, but it's also going to mean that we're going to have more productive and prosperous workers in the future who can help us innovate and meet the needs of tomorrow's workforce. But if we don't invest in our kids and families, then we're really getting ourselves behind the 8 ball when we really could be making these really important investments. So we've been pushing very hard for the child tax credit to be reinstated. And we're hoping that an op-ed I wrote recently will get published by somebody to help us raise that awareness, because there is resistance in Congress.
Yes.
And we really want to help folks understand that it's an investment in kids and families that will pay dividends for a really long time.
Bill, can you do anything on the school board levels?
Yes. I was thinking of that. One of the things that we have, and I was thinking, wouldn't this be a great thing to provide an insurance option for employees? I mean, so for example, at the school board, you can get cancer insurance.
Right.
So that if you get cancer, it not only pays for your medical bills, but it pays you a salary while you're out. So,
that's actually the proposal in North Carolina, Bill. The proposed legislation that we have put forward with our partners is to create an insurance program for paid family leave so that every employee would pay maybe $5 a pay period. And then you can use it across the lifespan, not just when you have the birth of a child, but your spouse gets sick and you need to take care of them. Yep. Your elderly parents get sick and you have to take some time off to take care of them. You shouldn't have to lose your job to be a caregiver.
Yep. And that's going upstream. And I think we've had a mentality here in America not to do that. We don't think upstream. We think, well, let's handle the problem right in front of us, not what's causing it. And I think your organization, our organization, and your team has gone a long way to start building this information. And Odell, I would say that, at Mount Zion, you may want them to come in and talk about Connection Matters to some of your staff and offer it as a freebie for anybody in the congregation so they can see it.
And you both live in Guilford County. And our partners at Family Forward NC, which is an initiative that encourages employers to adopt family-friendly workplace policies, like flexible schedules, paid family leave, on-site childcare, or childcare subsidies. They're working intensively in Guilford County right now to make Guilford County the first Family Forward certified community in our state. And that's really exciting to see. The Chamber of Commerce is really engaged. And there's a great movement in Guilford County for more employers to start offering those kind of benefits for their employees. And I think they're going to be a model for the rest of the state.
So Family Forward NC in Guilford County. I'm going to look them up and go visit them.
They're great. You just let me know. Lisa Finaldi runs that initiative for the Early Childhood Foundation, and they are doing amazing work.
Why don't you send an email and introduce Odell and I, and maybe we'll get her on the show as well.
Happy to.
Yeah, loved it. We're getting near the end. Kristen and Sharon, you guys have the last word.
Hey, but we're just thrilled to be able to offer the opportunity for more folks to become positive childhood allies. The opportunity here is to invest. It's to invest in our work. It's to invest in children and families all across our state, to have a hopeful future together. And there's so much great science and evidence behind this. It is not just the right thing to do. It's empirically going to make a big difference for kids and families. Kris?
I just want to say thank you in advance to all of our partners and supporters across the state for a really successful, exciting Child Abuse Prevention Month 2024. And we are here if you need us at Positive Childhood Alliance North Carolina, formerly known as Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina. Thank you so much for your support over the years. We're excited to all the years that lie ahead and the change that we can make together.
Thank you. Thank you, Odell.
I'm just amazed. I'm just reliving my childhood sitting here, and it's always thankful for those who care for the least and the left behind.
Amen.
Find Bill and Odell online at thecommonground.show. This podcast is a production of BG Ad Group. All rights reserved.
This podcast is brought to you by Yes Weekly, the Triad's largest circulated and best read weekly magazine. You can also find us online at yesweekly.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Yes Weekly, your trusted news leader for local arts, entertainment, music, food, and more for nearly 18 years.
Whether you're a big, medium, or small business, managing and growing the bottom line is important. Focus CFO brings the experience and financial acumen of a Fortune 100 chief financial officer to your company at a fraction of the cost. P&L help, internal reporting processes, or any business transitions or events. Focus CFO will help you and your team have a CFO in your company's back pocket. Focus CFO. Learn more at focuscfo.com.